Hello,
Hello.
everyone. Were you going to do it or was I supposed to do
You are
it?
doing it, Jen. Jen is doing it tonight.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Cecelia, who is an occupational therapist, an amazing friend, a great mother, great sister, great person overall. She does work in the school system, one of the largest ones here in our state. And she's just been amazing. And my name is Jennifer, and I am the parent advocate. I am a mother of two children that have been diagnosed with two different things, and I'm here to be open and honest about what I've been through, our journey to get here, if you will.
And I've been in Jen's life, wow, for maybe 7
8 years,
years, 8 years.
7 years.
I started treating her son when he was 3 years old. And over the years, I have become a mentor and a friend and also an advocate for her and her son, although I no longer treat him. And that's something that I want all parents to know, is that I don't have to be your child's therapist to be your child's advocate. And Jen doesn't have to be your friend to be your advocate. And here at School Life Ready, that's what we do. We talk about all things pertaining to parenting, especially parenting children with disabilities or children with learning challenges. So every week we're here for you, and we have our podcast, School Life Ready Talks. We have our program, School Life Ready, and we have our parent group on Facebook, School Life Ready Parent Group. So tonight we are tackling and answering one of the most confusing and emotional questions parent asks. A lot of parents, when their child gets diagnosed, they suffer a loss. And for some parents, it helps them. And when their child becomes eligible for school services, the same thing happens. Some parents are elated because they feel like finally their child is able to get the help and support that they need. And some parents find it to be another thing in life that's downing and depressing. So tonight, Jen and I, we're going to tackle the question and talk about what the differences are between a diagnosis and a school eligibility, and really help parents to package it in such a way that they can deal with either or both, depending on their child's needs. So, yep, I'm excited to take on tonight's challenge. Definitely excited about it.
I am too, because I've been on both sides of it. So
I know. It's funny. When I met you, your first child was diagnosed, and
mhm.
then we've been working together for a while, and then your second child, you went through a different process altogether from the first child. It's amazing how this is not like a cookie cutter approach for
Oh no,
children, right?
not at all. Every child is different and every school system is different, and every like I think phase that schools approval and things like that they go through, they're all different ways to navigate it. And I know when I got my youngest one's diagnosis, I was just like, duh, I've been saying this all along. Versus my first one, I was like, wait, what? Like, what are you saying? Speak in English. I'm trying to understand. Because at that point, I didn't have you in my life. It was after when I ran into someone at the playground who I was so frustrated. And she came up to me and she said, I'm sorry if my son antagonizes your son. He has ASD and we're working through it. And I said, my son was just diagnosed with autism. And she said, I have a great therapist. Let me connect you. And that's how we collided. And we've been together ever since.
Right? I was sharing that story with my husband, and I was telling him that how how you came to me was through another parent who I've been helping, and still continue to this day to provide support. I feel like whenever I work with a family, it doesn't matter if the kid is no longer with me. I feel like once we make that connection, it's like a bond. Like it's like because at the end of the day, children, especially children who are diagnosed and getting special education services, it continues way till they're like 22 years old in some cases. So although the child is no longer getting therapy, there's still questions that parents would call me up to ask my opinion. And let me tell you, I love that. I love that about my job. I love that about my persona. I love that I get to do that every day. And now with School Life Ready Talks, I get to do it with hundreds of families, and it's the highlight of my life, and I feel like I'm truly living my life's purpose. So it really, really enhances my everyday. So I'm grateful to all of you parents, to Jen and to everybody else who I serve, whether directly or indirectly. I'm
Yeah.
truly grateful to
And
everyone.
side note, this is who she is. Like in person, you can just feel the warmth. There are people that you speak to that you can just feel like you're in their way and you don't want to probe them too much. You do not get that energy from Dr. Cecelia. It is very open and like she's willing to help. You can just feel the passion and you don't feel like you're overstepping or, taking up too much of her time. Everything's very smooth and organic.
Thank you so much for that, Jen. I
Yeah.
really, really appreciate that. So tonight, but one thing with me though, I keep it real.
Yep. She does. I tried getting my oldest one out of getting to school too early, and she said, "Why is your child different?" And I said, "I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't bring that up." So yes, very real, and I love that because I would look silly at some of these.
Like, let me share the story real quick. Jen wanted to have an accommodation for her child placed in the IEP that would allow him to go to school later or something to that effect. And she's like, I'm going to go into that IEP meeting. I'm going to ask if I can have him come to school later because I think it's going to be hard for him to wake up. And I was like, what? Why? Why? Why are you going to not let your child be held to the same standards like all children are? And guys, listen, there's sometimes wherein, yes, if your child has a medical need or if there's something very significant going on with your child, you might want to ask for certain accommodations to the school day, but Jen's child didn't need it. And I told her straight up, he doesn't need that.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Dr. Cecelia is to me. It's like a soundboard where sometimes things sound really good in my head. And then when I say it out loud and she asks me who, what, why, when, and it's like I don't have any of those answers, it's like, okay, I shouldn't bring that up. So
But
yes, so it's great to have someone in your corner who's also a friend and you can, have these like role play conversations before you go into these meetings.
right. And that's what our support group is all about too, to really keep it real with fellow parents, right? Because we do have all parents with everyone. With any group, we're going to have diverse opinions and thoughts about certain things. And so when we get together, we have to be real with each other. We have to keep it real and we have to help to support our group members or friends or families in an appropriate manner wherein they can be better to help their child be better.
Right.
So overall, it's like we're all helping each other to get there. So,
and that's really the mission of that's how this all started, was because we realized that we don't have a community, and that's what we want to have, is a community of people who are going or have been through similar situations, whether you're a parent, a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, just anyone that's able to help foster parents that are taking in children with special needs, where it's a community, no judgment.
Exactly. We have a no judgment zone because
Yep.
we get it. Jen gets it from the parent's perspective. I get it from the therapist and professional perspective.
Right.
And we have other people who come who are in the group, other professionals, other parents. And this is really an amazing situation that we have going, and I'm truly grateful for it because it has been a blessing in my life, and I know we have been a blessing to a lot of parents because I do get the emails and I do get the text messages. So we're going to continue to do this work. So back to what we're going to be talking about
Yes.
tonight. Diagnosis, right? So a diagnosis comes from a medical or clinical professional like a pediatrician, a psychologist, or a developmental specialist. So, a diagnosis examples could be autism, ADHD, anxiety,
Dyslexia.
dyslexia, other learning disabilities, and sometimes we might have genetic disorders, chromosomal disorders like Down syndromes or Q10 depletion. There are all these different genetic disorders as well that a doctor would diagnose. So those are diagnoses. So a diagnosis does not come from the school. It comes from a doctor or a psychologist or a developmental specialist. So what a diagnosis does, it really helps to explain your child, because a lot of times we will see the symptoms, or we'll see delayed motor skills, or we will see inability to pay attention. So we are seeing these symptoms, but we don't know the why. So the diagnosis helps to explain why we're seeing that, because a lot of times diagnoses are based on the symptoms that are being presented, whether it be the physical symptoms or the behavioral symptoms. Then that's how a diagnosis works.
Yes. And so your child can have one, both, or neither one, and still need support, which is the boat that I was in with my youngest one, where I knew that there was something going on, but I couldn't get any of that. I couldn't get a diagnosis from a doctor, and I couldn't get one from an eligibility from the schools. So you just continue to take your data and be able to continue to push and present that to other professionals so that you're able to get there.
Right. So if you do believe that something is going on with your child, always talk to your pediatrician, because there are a lot of times where kids have disabilities or they have delays in motor skills, delays in cognitive skills, or delay or behavioral disruptions, and there's no diagnosis for it. And those are the parents that a lot of times are more apprehensive because they know something is wrong, but they can't get a name for it.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, sometimes there's no name for it because your child is not falling into a specific diagnosis. And therefore, you won't get a diagnosis from your doctor. Now, there are parents who have been adamant until their doctor figures and give them a diagnosis. That can happen as well. Because if you're seeing something really, really wrong and you keep talking to your doctor and he's like, he might grow out of it, or, he's not falling into any particular category, then sometimes you really have to keep asking your doctor questions. And a lot of times I've seen where the parents have actually used the school to help the doctor to give a diagnosis, especially for kids with ADHD,
Oh
because a
yeah.
lot of it involves like filling out questionnaires from the school. Explain how you got your diagnosis for ADHD for your second son.
So what I did was I kept up with the data, the behavioral data. So when he was in preschool, I noticed that he would run around the classroom a lot. Like they would have circle time and he would be up running. And so I kind of had I had a feeling that something was going on. And so then finally I did get the ADHD diagnosis, but it was a questionnaire that the teachers had to fill out. It was something that the pediatrician had to fill out. And then I as well did. So it was definitely a team effort to get both of my children diagnosed. My youngest one was the most difficult one to get diagnosed with
Right.
ADHD.
Right. It took a while to get that diagnosis, although you have been seeing different things.
Well, yeah. And so the first couple of times that I brought it up to the pediatrician, with what I was told that it was learned behavior from his older brother. But I knew that regardless if it's learned behavior or not, that's still his behavior and it's going on outside of when his brother's present. Like his brother wasn't there at preschool or, just where camp activities and different things that he was doing. So that which is why I collected the data, because I kept getting that pushback. It's learned behavior from, older brother.
Yeah. And you know what? I've seen it wherein there are times where the younger siblings does mimic the behavior of the older sibling who have like an ADHD or an autism diagnosis, and the younger sibling does mimic the behaviors. And sometimes over time, with slight intervention, not major intervention, but we can see changes. However, I can say this: most times, if you have a child that has an autism diagnosis, chances are your second child might have also an autism diagnosis or an ADHD diagnosis or a speech delayed diagnosis. There's a lot of genetic correlation with your children, when you, especially when your first child does have that diagnosis. And I always think, if you have a child with autism and you have a second child and you're seeing certain behaviors, don't take it lightly and just say, oh, he's probably just mimicking his older sibling. Make sure you're speaking to your pediatrician, because in most instances, that second child also might might eventually get a diagnosis of autism or speech delay or ADHD, or might need some school supports. Even if they don't get the diagnosis, they might also need some school supports. So definitely be on the lookout if you already have a child with autism, especially, or ADHD. Now, the difference with diagnosis and eligibility is that eligibility is a school decision. It's unlike diagnosis. It's not a medical. It's not a medical decision. So the school eligibility answers one question, and that is, does your child need specialized instruction or services to access their education? So at school eligibility is only about what your child needs in school. Like, you can't send your kid's school eligibility to the doctors. You can't even send your child eligibility to like your speech therapist or your occupational therapist. Yes, sometimes as therapists, we like to know the eligibilities, but it's not like it's something you can be like, oh, my child is eligible for specific learning disabilities. And your therapist is like, okay, I'll give you therapy based on that. No, it doesn't. It doesn't work that way. Insurance companies don't cover therapies using a school eligibility. However, they cover therapists using that medical diagnosis. So it's very important for parents to know the difference. And some of the categories for school eligibility are specific learning disability, which dyslexia would fall under that. So a child with dyslexia who is diagnosed with dyslexia may be eligible in school for specific learning disability, because that's what dyslexia is, right?
Right.
Or a child who is diagnosed with a delay in speech would be eligible for speech and language impairment. We also have an eligibility called other health impairment. And this normally, other health impairment are those diagnoses that are health based. Because as I said before, guys, there's a whole lot of genetic and chromosomal disorders.
Right.
But and there's some chromosomal disorders that don't affect intellect, but might affect motor skills. So you might have other health impairment as an eligibility. Yeah, we also have what's called an orthopedic impairment eligibility, where it's those kids who are born with amputations or have suffered amputations throughout their lives, or they're born with fragile bones, brittle bones, or different orthopedic type impairments that affects their joints and muscles. So those kids would be eligible under the orthopedic impairment. And we also have intellectual disabilities. So those are the kids who will struggle with academic tasks. And we have emotional disturbance or emotional behavioral disorders. So those are children who have difficulty with regulating their emotions, who might also have a psychiatric diagnosis, because children do get psychiatric diagnosis as well. So in school, the common eligibilities are autism spectrum disorder, speech and language impairment, other health impairment, orthopedic impairment, specific learning disability, emotional disturbance, emotional behavior disorder, and intellectual disability. So those are eligibilities. So the diagnosis and the eligibilities are not the same. So these categories of special education eligibility, these categories are what helps your child to get those special ed services in school. They are not labels. They are actually access points to get in services. And they're needed. They're needed for your school's team to help put together an IEP plan, or what's called a 504 plan, which is, to let you know what accommodations that would best serve them. So don't pay attention to what they are. They're more for your school use. They're not for you to say, oh, my child has an orthopedic impairment, so that means anything necessarily.
Yeah. So a diagnosis explains why, and eligibility determines the support, is the way that I like to see it.
Mhm.
And getting a diagnosis can be very emotional. You can be grieving some, loss of what you had anticipated, which is totally valid. You feel validated. And those feelings all come in at once. So it is something to look for, and we always try to advocate, or we always advocate for self-care, and just, I think it's important to know what's coming ahead when you do, start peeling these onions and discovering what's really the cause of, such behavior, or just, or learning, um, being behind in learning, etc.
Absolutely. And so, Jen,
Mhm.
let's give the example of your son, your older son,
Sure.
because he has a diagnosis, he has an eligibility, and he has a placement. So
Yep.
just tell parents out there how it is for your son and how you have been able to just navigate the differences, because here it is, you got diagnosed and you got eligibility, and then you were placed in a classroom that was neither, especially in the last year, you were placed
Yeah.
in a classroom that was neither the eligibility or the diagnosis, but you feel like your son is being served well. So let's just discuss that with families so they can understand why not to fear any of this.
Yes. So do not fear. It is it's forever changing. If you will, every year our kids get different teachers, and no two teachers are the same. So last year, for instance, was a very rough year. My child was not his peers, it just wasn't the correct classroom setting for him. And I started pushing the school to push him to move him into an EBD classroom, which is where he's at now, and he's doing much better. But I say that to say that um, we are forever advocating for our children. And this year, like I said, last year wasn't good, but then this year was amazing. So I'm always praying for every year to be great, but it is something that we do need to take data on. Um, not all, the services each year are very different, because you do get a different occupational therapist, you do get different speech therapist, and the kids are growing. But so to your point of speaking on the eligibility and so on, my child, I don't know, are they eligible for EBD setting, for an EBD setting, if you just have an autism?
EBD is an eligibility, but also that it's an eligibility that's given to kids who have difficulty with regulating their emotions. So a lot
Mhm.
of times you will see children who are on the spectrum in an EBD class. You'll see children who have
Are not.
behavioral
Mhm.
issues in an EBD class. You'll see um, children who are typically performing, like their academics are on par, but that emotional regulation piece is not there. So typically those are the kids who are in an EBD classroom. Now with your son, you had pushed for him to be served in an EBD classroom, wherein this is where they smell the roses and blow out the candles,
Yes.
using
Yes.
using all those mindfulness
Yeah.
and different practices to help the children with their emotions. And it can be very beneficial. Those classroom settings can be very beneficial to the kids who are served in them. But your child doesn't have an eligibility of EBD, which is emotional behavioral disorder. His eligibility is autism.
Correct.
And his diagnosis is also autism. So he
Yes.
has a
And
diagnosis
ADHD.
of autism, and he has a school eligibility of autism, but he is served in a classroom for children with emotional behavioral disorders. So that's what I want parents to understand. Like, don't get caught up with the labels.
Right.
Be more focused on the function of the environment that your child is in. Be more focused on what you as the parent is doing to help your child to be the best versions of themselves. So that needs to be the focus, not all these diagnoses and eligibilities and all these different acronyms, where I know when parents come to these IEP meetings, they're hearing all these acronyms. Don't get caught up in all of that, because I know a lot of times I'll see parents say, "Hey, but he has an autism diagnosis. Why is he not being served in an autism a class for children with autism, or why doesn't he have an autism eligibility?" Because depending on how your child is functioning, the eligibility may vary from the the depending on how your child is functioning, the eligibility may vary from what the diagnosis is, right? So not because your child has a diagnosis of autism means that he will necessarily be eligible under the autism spectrum disorder. Because I've seen children being eligible under other health impairments. I've seen where they're being eligible, children with autism diagnosis being eligible under speech language impairment, or even being eligible under emotional behavioral disorder. So leave that to the school and the team to determine their eligibility. That's their forte. That's they know what they're doing where that is concerned. So, and here's another thing. Many children qualify for special education without a medical diagnosis. So your child might not even have a medical diagnosis, but yet they still qualify for special education services because they meet the eligibility of these criteria and categories, such as speech delays, learning disabilities, emotional regulation challenges. So your child doesn't have to have a diagnosis to be eligible for special ed. And I think a lot of times parents think their child needs the diagnosis. No, your child doesn't need to be diagnosed at all. And then sometimes we'll have parents who are thinking their child doesn't even need special ed services.
Right.
Right. So we'll have the school saying, we believe your child needs special education services. And the parents are like, no, they don't need it. And as a parent, you have a right to refuse it. And there are some parents who do refuse it. And that's going to be any parent's rights, because everybody's life is different. And so we are here to support you. Whatever your choice is, we will tend to guide you and give you information, because that's what we do on this show. And that's what we do in the School Life Ready program and parent support group, is we try to provide information so that parents can make the informed decision. If we are asked our opinion, and you know me, if you ask me, I'm going to tell you how I see it. But at the end of the day, that's just my personal or professional opinion. It's not necessarily what you need to be doing. And I'm not diagnosing your child. I'm not saying your child should definitely be doing one thing or another, but I will definitely share the information so that you as a parent can make a decision based on what your child needs or what you think your child needs. And that's what I've done with Jen all these years. Even when I have an opinion about something, I will ask her a ton of questions first,
Right.
to see where she's coming from, because she might be very legitimate in her thoughts and what she wants. And a lot of times parents, they're like, I wanted a parent to work and do yoga exercises just for the movement with her child, to get her child to self-regulate. And she's like, no, because doing yoga is against her religion. I can't force anything on anyone. I have to respect each family's culture and norms. It's not for me to say, hey, you got to do this because that will be beneficial. No, we don't do that here at School Life Ready. We really help to guide parents to help them make their decision on what's best for their families and best for their child, what they think. Because at the end of the day, I believe that every parent wants to do what they think is best for their child. And so I'm all for that. And I always say this, if you try something or you think something, there's nothing wrong with you changing your mind.
Yeah, and then, but also I would like to say that a lot of times I've called Dr. Cecelia and it's been a thought, or I've had like an emotional response. And sometimes you do need someone to tell you that, you're being emotional about it, or that's not what the teacher meant. We look at emails and it's hard to tell the tones or see, where the teacher's coming from, and to have someone who's in the system and knows, firsthand knowledge of what's going on in there. And she does not work for our school system, so it's completely different. But I trust her opinion because she's around these teachers all day, 40 something hours a week, and so it's good. It's good feedback to be able to go to her with questions or concerns.
Right. And the thing, and another positive about this is that I am on the side of the school personnel, and I'm also on the side of the parents. So it helps me to be kind of in the
Balance.
middle, to be able to hear both sides of an argument and really help the families. But at the end of the day, my interest is always in the interest of the parent and the child.
Right.
That's because at the end of the day, I think that's why we're here to serve. And most teachers are like that too. I don't think there's ever any teacher that I've heard that said, I am doing this for the school.
Right.
Yeah. I've never heard a teacher say that. Like, I'm in here for the school, or it's always for the kids. It's always for the kids and their families. And so a lot of times, because I do go to contentious IEP meetings, and I am here to say to parents, we as school staff, we're really there for you. We are being paid by the school system, but the school system has nothing to give us but our paycheck, our purpose, our passion. All comes from what we're doing with your student or with your child. So a lot of times I see parents like acting like we don't want to serve the kids, or we don't want to give them what their kids need, or we're trying to give their kids more services than their need. No, we want to really help you and your child. And we have so many topics here at School Life Ready that will also help you guys to learn how to communicate with your school. We have covered a lot of that on several topics shows before, but I will also continue, and I will make a specific episode of how to communicate communication between parents and the school, because at the end of the day, I think we're all on the same page, but we don't know that we're all on the same page.
Yeah, so it's just about like breaking that wall, breaking that barrier. Like I just got done texting my son's teacher. We weren't in school because of the storm today or yesterday, and so she just got done texting me about 30 minutes ago, letting me know that she's excited to see the kids tomorrow. But it's breaking that barrier of like, this is someone who's in my corner, and I don't need to see them as an enemy, or someone who's working against me to, facilitate something off with the school or CPS, whatever. It's not like that at all. They genuinely want to see you thrive.
Absolutely. So if you're navigating a diagnosis, eligibility meeting, or placement, just pause. Ask questions and seek clarity. There is no need for any back and forth. everything is going to be okay. The right supports at the right time can make the world of difference for you and your child. Because when you are doing well, it's so much easier for your child to be doing well. So we really try to bridge that gap and to bring teachers and parents and administration and family members together so that we can all work together for the benefit of the child. So I hope that everyone got some good information tonight, and I'm hoping that parents, you can take this information onto your next eligibility meeting or IEP meeting and know that you are supported. And I want you to feel supported, and I want you to know that your child is supported.
Yes. And those supports can change every single year. Like I shared earlier, last year was not so great, but then he was moved into a different supporting classroom, and this year is going amazing. So it's always changing, and don't feel pressure to keep your child in a classroom that you feel like is not the right fit.
Exactly. Ask for what you want. Have meetings. You have the right to call meetings. Don't forget that. And even if your child is not yet having an IEP, you still can reach out to your teachers, express your concerns, and see what supports are there for your child. If you have any questions or need any clarification on anything that we have spoken about, please feel free to email us at schoollifeready@gmail.com. The schoollifeready.com website is on its way.
Yay!
It was always there, but guys, we had some technical difficulties, and you can still go to the schoollifeready.com website, but you're not able to submit your questions right now. But we're getting it worked on. So hopefully by the time we meet next week, we should be back. And I had an amazing time tonight. Jen, anything to take us out? You brought us in.
To take us out, I would just say parents feel empowered, be calm when thinking, and just know that you're allowed to feel confused and take it one day at a time. Just ask for support as needed, and we wish you the best. Truly, this is a great platform for all of us to come together and be there for one another.
All right, you all. Well, that's it for us tonight, and we will see you next week.
See you next week.
Have a great night.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.